my name's Kayla, this is Cinnamon, Peaches, and Sage, and where exactly did the ultimate weapon hit down? Now I know some of you might be thinking, Kayla, we already know where the ultimate weapon hit. It created the crater in Paldea, duh. And I'll admit, I was a proponent of that theory as well. I made a whole video on it, but in history class, Miss Rayford explains that the crater was created over 1 million years ago. If we look at the Pokemon timeline, this could not possibly have lined up with the ultimate weapon. And I know some people might say, yeah, but Miss Rayford is shady. She could be lying. Technically, yeah, but at the same time, everything else she's told us is entirely true. She knows about the Ruinous Quartet and shares this knowledge with the player character. This makes it pretty unlikely that she's lying because all of the evidence we have so far is of her being kind of a little too honest. Assuming she's telling the truth, which I think we should assume based on the evidence of the game, this means that the ultimate weapon did not cause the crater of Paldea. This made me think though, if the ultimate weapon didn't hit down in Paldea, where did it hit? Well, it couldn't have been Galar because the ultimate weapon was fired 3,000 years ago. That's the same time period as the Darkest Day happened in Galar, and we have a lot of documentation about the Darkest Day. If a giant nuclear weapon hit down in Galar at the same time as the Darkest Day, you would think that there would be some sort of artist renditioning of that event based on how many artist depictions there are of the Darkest Day. Most people, myself included, always assumed that the ultimate weapon would have hit down somewhere near Kalos. I mean, 3,000 years ago, wouldn't a war have happened in that general area? That would be kind of true in our real life world. I mean, we didn't have the technology to travel the way that we do now. But the presence of Pokemon would make transportation in the Pokemon world a little bit different. I mean, if we look at Pokemon Legends Arceus, for example, we're able to travel around the Hisui region automatically by using an Abra. That Abra is teleporting us from location to location. Obviously, in real life, we do not have teleporters. And we definitely didn't have teleporters 3,000 years ago. So considering the presence of Pokemon and its impact on transportation, the region that was at war with Kalos doesn't necessarily need to be right next to it. In fact, in all the depictions of the ultimate weapon firing, we see it go very, very, very high up, so high that you can see the curvature of the planet. If the ultimate weapon was firing somewhere nearby, it really wouldn't need to go so high into the air. This means that it's actually kind of more likely that the ultimate weapon was fired at a region very far away from Kalos, not near it like we all have assumed. Do we have any pictures of where the ultimate weapon hit? We actually do have this one image of where the ultimate weapon hit, but it's pretty nondescript. The architecture looks kind of Greek-inspired, but remember that we also have the Temple of Sinnoh, which looks very similar to this temple over here, so it's really hard to say exactly where this area would be located in the Pokemon world. The only other evidence that we have related to the ultimate weapon is the effect of it having been fired. The most prominent long-term impact that we see in the games is the creation of Megastones. Professor Sycamore theorizes that Megastones were evolutionary stones that were irradiated by the power of either Xerneas or Yveltal. These are the Pokemon that were used to power the ultimate weapon. This means that Megastones were created when and where the ultimate weapon hit. Megastones are Pokemon specific, and not every Pokemon gets a Megastone. If Megastones were just created from evolutionary stones, it wouldn't make sense for them to apply to just one species of Pokemon. For Megastones to make any sort of sense, they likely contain the DNA of Pokemon that were irradiated by the ultimate weapon. In other words, these are historical versions of Pokemon that fought against AZ's side in the war. This helps explain why Pokemon that use Megastones look like historic versions of themselves. For example, it's noted in-game that Mega Salamence and Roaring Moon look similar to each other. This is because Mega Salamence is the result of a modern-day Salamence combined with Salamance's DNA that's been irradiated from 3,000 years ago, when AZ fired the ultimate weapon. While this historical Salamence from 3,000 years ago wouldn't look exactly like Roaring Moon, who's from way further back in history, it would have some more similarities to Roaring Moon, as well as some similarities to modern day Salamence. This is also evidence that real world evolution, not just the evolution we see in Pokemon games, is happening within the Pokemon world. If you want videos on real world evolution happening in the Pokemon world, you should definitely check out Birdkeeper Toby's videos about this, because they are absolutely amazing. He has a whole evolutionary tree of life that you can even get as a poster, and it's just like, yeah, but this aligns perfectly with that theory that Pokemon do evolve over time, in addition to going through evolutions at certain levels. Anyways, bringing it back to the ultimate weapon, if we look at which Pokemon have mega evolutions, we can figure out which Pokemon fought against AZ in the war. 40% of these Pokemon are from Hoenn, 32% from Kanto, 13% from Johto, 11% from Sinnoh, 2% from Unova, and 2% from Kalos. Based on the numbers alone, it seems likely that the ultimate weapon would have hit down somewhere between Hoenn and the Kanto-Johto area. I wonder if anything happened in real life that could relate to the ultimate weapon, aka Pokemon's version of a nuclear weapon. Just to make sure, let's look at some evidence against this theory. First off, we have two Pokemon that are not from a Japan-based region that get Mega Evolution. The Pokemon with the Mega Evolution from Unova is Audino. Audino is a nurse Pokemon though, and nurses tend to be more neutral in a war. It might make sense for a nurse Pokemon to get caught up in the blast. The Pokemon from Kalos is Diancie. But is Diancie technically from Kalos? Again, to positively call out Birdkeeper Toby, he made a fantastic video many years ago about Diancie and how it might not actually be from the Kalos region. Diancie's Pokédex entry states that it was originally a carbink that underwent a mysterious mutation. Mutations, while occurring naturally, can also be caused by radiation from nuclear weapons. Could Diancie have been created by the ultimate weapon, just like Megastones? And if so, and Birdkeeper Toby is right about Diancie not being originally from Kalos, could Diancie originally be from the region that was hit by the ultimate weapon? Diancie is also known as the Royal Pink Princess, so it's entirely possible that it was a Pokemon that the royal family had in this region that was attacked by Kalos. The war would have basically been AZ's kingdom and his Floette versus this other potential queendom with Diancie. Aside from Audino and Diancie, I also hear people making the argument that a Japan-based region would just be too far away from Kalos, but as I explained earlier, Pokemon are able to teleport, so this distance might not be a factor. In fact, 3 of the most prominent Pokemon that learn teleport all have Megastones. This means that these 3 teleporting Pokemon were all involved in the war. The last argument that I could find against this theory is that France has not fired any nuclear weapons in the real world. And yeah, that's entirely fair. However, in terms of the story of the Kalos games, it seems like inspiration is being drawn from multiple historical events and people that were not necessarily French-based. I mean, Lysander is pretty clearly a reference to one of the worst human beings in all of history, and that person was not French. Like, he even has his Megastone on a silver ring on his finger. He's the only character that has their Megastone on a ring. If you understand a lot about World War II history, you'll understand what this is a reference to. I'm not going to go into all of the references to World War II in the Kalos games because honestly it just makes me really, really sad, but know that there are a lot of references in there. Granted, the ultimate weapon was fired 3,000 years ago, which is a very different time period from when nuclear weapons were used in the real world. But it kind of makes sense that Pokemon, which is truly a family-friendly franchise, would move this sort of an event way into the past. Nuclear war is one of the most sensitive and dark topics facing humanity today. So if Pokemon wanted to address something so serious, it makes sense that they wouldn't make it a modern event and would move it as far back in the past as is feasibly possible. Regardless of if this theory is correct about where the ultimate weapon hit down, I think it might be best if we, as a Pokemon community, stop asking to see where the ultimate weapon hit. Like, do we really want to see a place that has endured that level of tragedy? I don't know if that would be right. Sorry, I'm like tearing up a little bit because it's just a really sensitive topic. If you know of any evidence that could help prove or disprove this theory, please let me know in the comments. Huge shout out to the people in my Discord, Capsule Monsters, who helped me formulate this theory. If you're looking for a kind and welcoming place to discuss Pokemon theories, I highly recommend you join that Discord. I hope you have a great day or night, and I will see you in the next one. Bye.